Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janna Vallabha Girivardhari Gopi Janna Vallabha Girivardhari Jasoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jasoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Thank you. Jamuna Tira Vanacharya Jamuna Tira Vanacharya Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janna Vallabha Girivardhari Gopi Janna Vallabha Girivardhari Jasoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jasoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jasoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanacharya Jamuna Tira Vanacharya Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Shri Radha Madhava ki Shri Radha Giridhari ki Jai Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajaka Jaja Shodhara Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Abhai Charana Ravinda Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki Jai Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajaka Jaja Shodhara Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Brinda ki Jai Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai Samveda Bhakti ki Jai Gaura Premanandi All glories to the assembled devotees All glories to the assembled devotees All glories assembled devotees All glories ceasing Guru and Sri Gauranga. So this morning, reading the 6th canto of the Bhagavatam, chapter 4, we're going to start with text 35 and be speaking on text 41, which has a purport. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Now, I have some verses I need devotees in the temple room who have the books on their devices to look up. Dravida, you probably have Mukundamala Stotra.
I do.
Text 14, if you could just pull that up. Who like to? You want it?
I feel I must say, are we starting?
I'm going to be referring to these, and I didn't have time to pull it all up. So just when it comes time, I may.
Are you going to give me a list?
No, just that. You do that one. You ready? You want one?
Give me the number.
14.
Yeah.
Mukundamala 14. Okay, this is about Narada Muni. First canto, 6th chapter, text 16. Who else? Want to do one? Do you have Chaitanya Charitamrita there?
Yeah.
Okay. This is Madhya Lila, chapter 6, verse 199. Who else? How about 4th canto, 9th chapter, 3rd verse. Anyone else?
You want me to do two?
You could, if you like. This is Prahlad Maharaj, 7th canto, 9th chapter, starting with text 5. 795. Okay. So, 1, 6, 16. This is Narada Muni. So let's do the words. Sri Shuka Uvacha Iti Stutaha Samstutavataha Sa Tasmin Agamarshane Pradurashit Kurukshetra Kurukshrestha Bhagavan Bhakta Vatsalaha Sri Sukuvacha Iti Stuta Samstuvataha Satasmin Agamarshane Pradurasit Kurushestra Shesta Bhagavan Bhakta Vatsalaha Sri Sukuvacha Iti Stuta Samstuvata Satasmin Agamarshane Pradurasit Kuru Shrestha Bhagavan Bhakta Vatsalaha Sri Sukuvacha Iti Stuta Samstuvata Satasmin Agamarshane Pradurasit Kurusheshta Bhagavan Bhakta Vatsalaha. Anyone like to chant?
Bhagavan Bhakta Vatsalaha Shri Shukovacha Iti Stuta Samstuvataha Satasmin Nagamarshane Pradurasi Kuru Shrestha Bhagavan Bhakta Vatsalaha Shri Shukovacha Iti Stuta Samstuvataha Satasmin Nagamarshane Pradurasit Kuru Shrestha Bhagavan Bhakta Vatsalaha Shri Shukovacha Iti Stuta Samstuvataha Satasmin Nagamarshane Bhagavan Bhaktavatsalaha Shri Shukovacha Iti Sutta Samstuvataha Satasmin Agamashane Radharasi Kurushrestha Bhagavan Bhaktavatsalaha.
Anyone else? Satasmin Agamarshane Pradurasit Kuru Shreshta Bhagavan Bhaktavatsalaha. Word for word. Sri Shukovacha. Sri Shukadev Goswami said, Iti, thus, stutaha, being praised, samstutavata, of Daksha, who was offering prayers. Saha, that Supreme Personality of Godhead. Tasmin, in that. Agamarshane, holy place celebrated as Agamarshana. Pradurasit, appeared. Kurushestra, O best of the Kuru dynasty. Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Bhaktavatsalaha, who is very kind to his devotees. And here's a translation for those verses. Sri Sukadeva Goswami said, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari, who was extremely affectionate to his devotees, was very pleased by the prayers offered by Daksha, and thus he appeared in that holy place known as Agamarshana. O Maharaj Parikshit, best of the Kuru dynasty, the Lord's lotus feet rested on the shoulders of his carrier Garuda, and he appeared with 8 long, mighty, very beautiful arms. In his hands he held a disc, conch shell, sword, shield, arrow, bow, rope, and club. In each hand a different weapon, all brilliantly shining. His garments were yellow, and his bodily hue was deep bluish. His eyes and face were very cheerful, and from his neck to his feet hung a long garland of flowers. His chest was decorated with the Kastuba jewel and the mark of Shrivatsa. On his head was a gorgeous round helmet, and his ears were decorated with earrings resembling sharks. All these ornaments were uncommonly beautiful. The Lord wore a golden belt on his waist, bracelets on his arms, rings on his fingers, and ankle bells on his feet. Thus decorated by various ornaments, the Lord Hari, who is attractive to all living entities of the 3 worlds, is known as Purushottama, the best personality. He was accompanied by great devotees like Narada, Nanda, and all the principal demigods, led by the heavenly king Indra and the residents of various upper planetary systems such as Siddhaloka, Gandharvaloka, and Charnaloka. Situated on both sides of the Lord and behind him as well, these devotees offered him prayers continuously. Text 40, translation. Seeing that wonderful and effulgent form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Prajapati Daksha was first somewhat afraid, and then he was very pleased to see the Lord, and he fell to the ground like a stick, Dandavat, to offer his respects to the Lord. And then text 41. As rivers are filled by water flowing from a mountain, all of Daksha's senses were filled with pleasure. Because of his highly elevated happiness, Daksha could not say anything but simply remained flat on the ground. Please repeat. As rivers are filled by water flowing from a mountain, all of Daksha's senses were filled with pleasure. Because of his highly elevated happiness, Daksha could not say anything, but simply remained flat on the ground. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Excuse me. I'll go here. Much better. When one actually realizes or sees the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one is filled with complete happiness. For example, when Dhruva Maharaj saw the Lord in his presence, he said, Swamin kritartosmi baram nayache. My dear Lord, I have nothing to ask from you. Now I am completely satisfied. Similarly, when Prajapati Daksha saw the Supreme Lord in his presence, he simply fell flat, unable to speak or ask him for anything. Om Agyantimirandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chakshud Unminitam Ninataismai Sri Gurave Namaha. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Panchakapatarubhashta Kripa Sindhu Bevacha Patidanam Bhavani Bho Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. So by your good wishes and prayers, I'll try to say a few words. Thank you. I'm turning to the brightly effulgent brahmacharis in that corner for blessings. The two of you, it's like Narayan Rishi over there. Rupa and Sanatana Goswamis. Very nice. Okay. Well, a few things. These selections I have are all selections of devotees who they saw the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So we'll bring them up as time allows. The first point I wanted to make is when you meet people of different spiritual paths, a good question to ask them is, if I follow the path you're following and attain perfection, what is perfection like? I mean, that's a valid question. If I'm going to invest all my energy and time and so on and so on and so on, what happens at the end? And what is perfection according to your philosophy? A lot of what? Harp playing. Okay, that could be there. And it's interesting. Some even say that you never see God. He cannot be seen. You cannot be seen. He's so great, you can't see him. Wouldn't that be amazing if you told a little child you can't see your parents? Right? It's a heartbreak. I mean, that's devastating. You can never see your parents. Sometimes it happens, right? There's war now, is going on. Parents are killed and kids are orphaned like anything and they never see their parents again. Is that a good thing? That's a perfection, that I'll never be able to see my parents, the people who love me the most. So it's an odd understanding of odd philosophy. It's not one I want to do. So anyways, it's a good discussion with them, what it means. Because in Krishna consciousness, we know exactly what's going to happen if we attain, what perfection is and if we attain it. And the different levels of achieving that perfection, it's all very clearly delineated in the scriptures. And here, I don't know. I think I think later on in this discussion of this whole pastime of Daksha, because he's seeing the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He's received that darshan, but it's not that he's a pure devotee. And still he gets the darshan of the Lord because he has a duty to perform. Krishna's coming and encouraging him. Because it's an important duty. He's got to fill up the universe help fill up the universe with living entities. And it says here that he was overwhelmed so much so that he couldn't say anything. At that point, he didn't really want anything. But Krishna knows, what's in the heart, and he had a desire. Prabhupada says to have a lot of sex. Prabhupada said, members of the Krishna conscious movement shouldn't be like this. Shouldn't pray like this. There's some wonderful purports later on. I just finished this whole encounter on the weekend. I read it, I was studying the Bhagavatam and going through it. So anyways, but he had his duty to fulfill, just like Lord Brahma has his duty to fulfill. And it says Lord Krishna came to him and shook his hand. Like, keep up the good work, someone's got to create the universe. Everyone is acting on behalf, the devatas and devotees, they act on behalf of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We all have our duties in this world and in the spiritual world for the pleasure of the Lord, and it's variegated. Now, in the purport, Srila Prabhupada is referring to Dhruva Maharaj, who has 493. Okay? So, but this verse, actually, why don't you read that? There's 2 verses, 3 and 4. Just read the translations. Do you have a microphone there? Okay, this is when Dhruva Maharaj, same thing. When Dhruva Maharaj finally saw the Supreme Personality of Godhead, this was described here. Go ahead.
When Dhruva Maharaj saw his Lord just in front of him, he was greatly agitated and offered him obeisances and respect. He fell flat before him like a rod and became absorbed in love of Godhead. Dhruva Maharaj, in ecstasy, looked upon the Lord as if he were drinking the Lord with his eyes, kissing the lotus feet of the Lord with his mouth, and embracing the Lord with his arms. Don't read the purport?
No.
Okay.
No. Is that both verses?
No. Although Dhruva Maharaj was a small boy, he wanted to offer prayers to the Supreme Personality of Godhead in suitable language. But because he was inexperienced, he could not adjust himself immediately. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, being situated in everyone's heart, could understand Dhruva Maharaj's awkward position. Out of his causeless mercy, he touched his conch shell to the forehead of Dhruva Maharaj, who stood before him with folded hands.
Okay. In this, where is this verse actually taking from? Another literature, the Swamin Kritarto Smi Bharam Nayache. It's not a verse from the Bhagavatam, it's another scripture. Something like that, yeah. And what the verse is that, Dhruva Maharaj, a young boy, I mean, this is amazing. This is what's amazing here. Prahlad Maharaj also be reading about. Young boy, just a young child, and they attain perfection. It wasn't, it's rare. It's ecstatic and rare. But he wanted a kingdom. That's why he was worshiping Vishnu. He wanted a kingdom. And he performed in his mind. That's what he wanted. That's what he wanted. That's what he wanted. And but when the Lord appeared to him, he said, this whole desire for a kingdom, it's like broken pieces of glass. Now you're like a actual gem or jewel, and these things were like just broken pieces of glass. Just like, remember out in front of the temple for about a week there on the street, with all that broken glass when someone smashed into a car or something. Just last week or something. And just broken glass in the street, just broken glass. What's the value? There's no value whatsoever. In fact, it's just an irritation. And he compared to his desire, his heartfelt desire to have a kingdom greater than even Lord Brahma. And he's saying, Swami, my dear Lord, Kritartosmi Varam Nayat. Now I don't really want anything. I'm completely satisfied. Just seeing you, like that, completely satisfied. Just like this verse here we're reading today, it says, Daksha's senses were filled with pleasure, just like, what's the analogy in the translation? Just like rivers flowing from a mountain. When rivers flowing from a mountain, they're filled up with all this water. So all of his senses were completely filled with pleasure. Can you imagine that simultaneously? If your eyes, you like that? Your eyes, your ears, every single sense was just filled with pleasure. There's a verse like that in the Bhagavad Gita, maybe more than one. All of one's senses just become filled with pleasure. That's unachievable in the material world. We keep trying, but it's not possible. It's a spiritual phenomenon, because the nature of the soul is ananda. Actually, that's our natural state is to always be filled with pleasure. So something's gone wrong. Just like a dis-ease, it means something's wrong. You're supposed to be healthy, but something's gone wrong. Now you're in pain, or there's a problem. So Dhruva Maharaj, when he saw the Lord, he was completely satisfied. Of course, and then the Lord, understanding his prayers and desires, gave him Dhruvaloka. But, so that's Dhruva Maharaj. How about Narada Muni? That's the first canto, 6th chapter. That's what I wanted to read. You need a microphone for this. Is there a microphone right there? This is where Narada Muni, as a young boy, because we don't have time to tell all the backstories to all of this, but go ahead.
As soon as I began to meditate upon the lotus feet of the personality of Godhead within my mind, transformed in transcendental love, tears rolled down my eyes, and without delay the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, appeared on the lotus of my heart.
Is that 17 also?
O Vyasadeva, at that time, being exceedingly overpowered by feelings of happiness, every part of my body became separately enlivened. Being absorbed in an ocean of ecstasy, I could not see both myself and the Lord. Could not.
Okay. There's some very nice points in that purport, but we need to move on because we've got a lot to read here. Seeing the Supreme Personality of Godhead is according to one's devotion. Like Krishna says that as you surrender to me, I reward you accordingly. And in that particular pastime, Krishna appeared, then he disappeared. And he told Narada Muni, I'm doing this just to increase your desire to attain me. So Krishna sometimes he reciprocates sometimes in that way, just to increase our desire to surrender even more. He gives us a little taste, but if you want some more, you got to work a little harder, right? Just like if you want a pay raise, what do you got to do? You got to work harder. You take on more responsibility, and that's devotional service. Now, seeing the Lord is not a cheap thing. Like Prabhupada would say many times that these sahajiyas in Vrindavan, there's a different yogis will say this, or there's different books and so on. How my guru, he was seeing Radha and Krishna in the streets of Vrindavan at night, or something like that. But in other words, oh, by the way, I saw Radha and Krishna walk by yesterday. It's not like that. It's not like that. But one attains that level, premanjana churita bhakti valochanena santa sadaiva. One's always seeing, because one has prema, one's always seeing Krishna. And there's a story that Prabhupada was on he was on the train, but a gentleman came on to speak to Prabhupada and said he was seeing Lord Jagannath outside his window on the train, coming along the train with him. And Prabhupada didn't get too much, but he just made the point, now you see the Lord, now it's time to serve the Lord. So people say, oh, I saw this, I saw that, I saw that. But the real point is seva, or service. And it's not that one sees the Lord casually in a bush in Vrindavan, and then that's it. And you go home and tell everyone, oh, I saw Krishna. It's not like that. That's just Maya. That's not real. So real devotion means the Lord, all of these pastimes we're going to read, it says the Lord being pleased with the devotee reveals himself. It's not under our control. It's not under our control. Krishna is controlling that completely, and in being pleased, he reveals himself to his devotees. And in every single instance, this exact same thing happens. The exact same thing happens. It's throughout the pages of the Bhagavatam. The form of the Lord, whether it's the form of Narayan or Krishna, it's all the same thing happens over and over and over again. It's not that every devotee sees something different, I always get this backwards. The yatamat tatapat, is that right? I got it right. Okay, as many people, as many paths. Your idea of God is wonderful, and my idea of God is wonderful, and etc. Your path is wonderful. No, it's not like that. There's an absolute path. Let's read about Prahlad Maharaj. That's 7, 9, 5, and 7.
7, 9, 5?
Yes.
When Lord Nrsimhadev saw the small boy,
When Lord Nrsimhadev saw the small boy Prahlad Maharaj prostrated at the soles of his lotus feet, he, the Lord, became most ecstatic in affection toward his devotee. Raising Prahlad, the Lord placed his lotus hand upon the boy's head, because his hand is always ready to create fearlessness in all of his devotees.
Is that 5 through 7?
Oh, you want to read 6 and 7 too? Okay. Yeah. By the touch of Lord Nrsimhadev's hand on Prahlad's head, Prahlad was completely freed of all material contaminations and desires, as if he had been thoroughly cleansed. Therefore, he at once became transcendently situated, and all the symptoms of ecstasy became manifest in his body. His heart filled with love, and his eyes with tears, and thus he was able to completely capture the lotus feet of the Lord within the core of his heart. Prahlad Maharaj fixed his mind and sight upon Lord Nrsimhadev with full attention in complete trance. With a fixed mind, he began to offer prayers in love with a faltering voice.
I mean, you see that whenever the devotees get the darshan of the Lord, they offer all of these different chapters we're talking about, they're offering so many select prayers to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Right. Yeah. Beautiful prayers, because you got the touch of the Lord, whether the conch shell or the hand on the head, and then he just started speaking. Beautiful verses, just outpouring from his heart of pure bhakti. And this, the realization of Krishna is just this verse we were reading about in the purport, this smamin kritarto smi varam nayache, that the comparison, there's nothing to compare with becoming Krishna conscious or experiencing Krishna. So I'd like you to read, this is one of my favorite verses, I was like hearing this from Mukundamala Stotra, number 14. It's Maharaj Kulakshetra is making a comparison here. It's wonderful.
Once our Savior has been seen.
Microphone.
Once our Savior has been seen, the whole earth becomes no greater than a speck of dust. All the waters of the ocean become mere droplets. The totality of fire becomes a minute spark. The winds become just a faint sigh, and the expanse of space becomes a tiny hole. Great lords like Rudra and grandfather Brahma become insignificant, and all the demigods become like small insects. Indeed, even one particle of dust from our Lord's feet conquers all.
So he's making a poetic comparison here, because all the most amazing, wonderful, great things in this world that we experience, they're all just little tiny, insignificant things when you see the Lord or experience
when our
the
Savior
Lord.
has been seen, yeah.
Yeah.
The same, Prabhupada said the same thing in that famous verse, Vishram Purna Sukhayade, Vidi Mahindari Shikitayate. That first one has been empowered by the merciful sidelong glance of Lord Chaitanya. Then there's all these things, and the last one is that Brahma and Shiva and all the other gods are no more insignificant than insects. It's the same thing.
It puts everything in perspective. Who has Chaitanya Charitamrita? Yes, that's. Let's finish with that. This is Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, who got a revelation that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was the Supreme Personality of Godhead. You start with verse 199 and read the translations all the way through 211. They're just short verses, just read the English. It's chapter 6 of Madhya Lila. Madhya Lila 6, 199. This is Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya finally realizing, this is after his attempt to purify Lord Chaitanya by teaching him Vedanta Sutra. And then this is at the end of that. Go ahead, Prabhu.
Upon hearing Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's explanation of the Atmaram verse, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was struck with wonder. He then understood Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to be Krishna in person, and he thus condemned himself in the following words. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is certainly Lord Krishna himself, because I could not understand him and was very proud of my own learning. I have committed many offenses. When Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya denounced himself as an offender and took shelter of the Lord desired to show him mercy. To show him mercy, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu allowed him to see his Vishnu form. Thus he immediately assumed 4 hands. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu first showed him the 4-handed form and then appeared before him in his original form of Krishna, with a blackish complexion and a flute to his lips. When Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya saw the form of Lord Krishna manifested in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he immediately fell down flat to offer him obeisances. Then he stood up and with folded hands began to offer prayers. By the mercy of the Lord, all truth were revealed to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. Yep. Whoever is on the Zoom, please
Turn the mic on.
Turn the mic off, please, on the Zoom people.
Their mic.
We can hear you coughing.
Okay. They want me to turn my mic off. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
By the mercy of the Lord, all truth were revealed to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, and he could understand the importance of chanting the holy name and distributing love of Godhead everywhere.
So that's a very important point. It wasn't just, oh, I'm very happy. He understood the significance of chanting the holy name and the Sankirtan movement. Go ahead.
Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya composed 100 verses in a very short time. Indeed, not even Brihaspati, the priest of the heavenly planets, could compose verses as quickly. After hearing the 100 verses, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu happily embraced Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, who was immediately overwhelmed in ecstatic love of Godhead and fell unconscious. Out of ecstatic love of God, the Bhattacharya shed tears and his body was stunned. He exhibited an ecstatic mood and he perspired, shook and trembled. He sometimes danced, sometimes chanted, sometimes cried, and sometimes fell down to touch the lotus feet of the Lord. While Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was in ecstasy, Gopinath Acharya was very pleased. The associates of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu all laughed to see the Bhattacharya dance. And Gopinath Acharya told Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, "Sir, you have brought all this upon Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya." Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu replied, "You are a devotee because of your association. Lord Jagannath has shown him mercy." Continue. That's 2:11.
Jai. Thank you. This sadhu sangha, sarva shastra koi, lavamatra sadhu sangha sarva siddhi hoy. So the International Society for Krishna Consciousness is there for the association of devotees, and we should always be aspiring to associate. This is why associate with more advanced devotees, pure devotees, because in that association we always remain enlivened to become more and more Krishna conscious. And these different references we read today from the Bhagavatam and Chaitanya Charitamrita, you're associating with Dhruva Maharaj, Narada Muni, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, just hearing about their Krishna consciousness, and it's to enliven us. So that's the whole point, is that we need the association in many different forms of devotees who are more advanced to us than us, even those, especially those who've attained perfection. So we know what's down the road, and it's possible. It's not impossible, it's possible. And actually it's not just possible, it's our birthright. Was it Dayabak? That verse Dayabak, that means it's our inheritance, it's there, it's for us. We just have to go and collect it. Like Prabhupada, let me give the example, like giving you the tickets, where would you like to go, Dr. Ras? Where would you like to fly to? Okay. San Diego, okay. You, where would you like to go? If I can give you a ticket anywhere in the world, where would you like to go? Vrindavan, okay. So I give you the ticket, but what do you got to do? You got to take and get on you got to get on the airplane, right? You got to fly. So the spiritual master is giving the tickets, but we got to get on. That's the thing. We have to take the journey. And to enliven us to take the journey, associate with those who are more advanced, further along. Yes, it's real, it's happening, it's true. And all the way up to this point of actually seeing the Supreme Personality of Godhead personally. And it's not that their spiritual life ended then. It's like, okay, saw Krishna, okay, I'm done. Right? It's not like that. Some mundane thing like Prabhupada. The example is given by Tamal Krishna Maharaj when Prabhupada was there with Tamal Krishna Maharaj, and they were negotiating with Dai Nippon, the big printer. In the early days, there was a big printer in Japan who did the Krishna book and different books. Yeah. Beat Back to Godhead and so on. Anyways, there's a big conference room and all the different executives there were and so on, and there's a whole pastime of Prabhupada being expert on getting the best price and so on. But when the room started clearing out, there was this young executive there, and everyone had, I guess, the custom to leave out their business card. So he took the whole stack and he was, stacking up, and Prabhupada asked him what was his, aspiration or goal in life. And then he went like this. He took his card, which was on the bottom of the stack, and put it on the top. In other words, my perfection life, if I can rise to the top of this company, that's it. Like that, it's over. It's over. But in Krishna consciousness, it's never over. That's something you can tell yourself. You know, like if you're kind of tired chanting your rounds, well, someone just did a multiplication of that. You know, you can get your a multiplication thing there. Okay, let's do it right now. Rasika, how many more years do you think you're going to live?
40.
40. So how many rounds of japa is that? 16 a day times 365 times 40. Rounds. So you might as well get used to it, right? You might as well, and how about the next life and the next life? You might as well get used to it, right? You're going to be chanting a long time. In fact, you'll be chanting eternally. So we might as well get used to it. This is it. And it just gets better and better and better. That's the point. It's not a drudgery. But that's the point of good association. And here we're hearing about Daksha, who was not on the highest level of Krishna consciousness, but Krishna's he's Bhakta Vatsala. He's very kind to his devotees. He's always encouraging. He's never discouraging. And he's encouraging him in his service, and he appeared to him and blessed him. He knew his heart and what he desired and so on. And this was an important service for the Lord to fill up the universe. So there were a few other references I wanted to read, but it's already later. So there's the whole process of devotional service, beginning with Shrad, Adau Shraddha Tata Sadhu. There's a whole ladder there. We know exactly what our path is and where it all, you could say, ends. On one hand, you can say it begins, because pure devotional service, when that begins, that means we're reinstated in our sarup. So we're very, very fortunate, and we can explain to people, you know, what Krishna consciousness is. I just listened recently to a room conversation in Detroit, and Jayadvaita Maharaj was speaking to Prabhupada about the college programs and how they're going into different colleges and presenting Krishna consciousness. He first explained about Varnashram and the fact that the professors and the students have nothing to say. They don't have a better idea of the social system. They don't have a better idea of God. They don't have a better idea of anything. You know? And they just don't. He was talking about one professor who was an impersonalist, gave some weird example about two fish in a fishbowl, not knowing where the fishbowl came from. And then Jayadvaita Maharaj turned it around and said, that's a theistic argument. Yes, we don't know, but someone must have made this arrangement of the fishbowl. But the point is that people don't know. They just have no idea. And they're saying all kinds of crazy, kooky things, but we know. And we should be very, very thankful for that. And always eager to, what does they call that? What's the Latin for seize the day? Carpe, something. Right, seize the day. It's another day. It's another day in Krishna consciousness. Where's Mani Bandhana? Okay, in the garden. He's okay. So he said that today when he came in. He says another day, another day, another beautiful day in Krishna consciousness. So we should end here. There may be some questions or things to add to this. If anyone have anything to say, yes.
The executive, Dhyanapan executive. So devotees, they would take the card and put it on the bottom. Dasa, dasa, anu, dasa, dasa. That's Lord Chaitanya's version, right?
Right.
And then the other thing was how, the two things I'm related to, and I may be off on this, but Dhruva is famous. I mean, the whole thing was famous is that, as you say, his motive was to get this kingdom. That was his whole motive of going out to the forest. And Narada Muni tried to, he tested him. He said, "You're too young, I'll give you later. Just, if you can't help me, sir, goodbye." So he was determined. So Narada Muni took that determination, and he dovetailed it. In other words, his determination was for the kingdom. He says, "Oh, here's how you get it." And he gave him a process which is super austere, but it included chanting the holy name. It included rudimentary deity worship. And so he's, assumingly at the beginning when he's starting to slow down, he's eating fruits off the tree and he just whatever drops and he's not eating at all and everything. He's still got that kingdom in his mind, but he's chanting Hare Krishna. He's worshiping the rudimentary deity, the mud deity, the thing. So he's getting purified, and then because of his sincerity and determination, he gets the darshan, and then he says, Swamin Kritartos Nivedanayacha. So similarly, at the beginning of the Bhagavatam, the second verse, the commentary by Sridhar Maharaj, that one of the cheating religions is that where you just desire your own liberation. That comes up also with Prahlad. That's not really a spiritual motive. I just want to be liberated, so let me go alone. Prahlad condemns that, right? But still, there's so much in the Bhagavad Gita, Janma Mrityu Jara Vyadi, and Prabhupada would always preach that do you want to experience birth and death? The mission of human life is to get free from that. So if you start chanting with that motive, that's fine. You take up the rest of the process, and before long, well, hopefully not before long, you're thinking, I just want to, nadanang nasundari. So it's the expert preachers, they take whatever, like Prabhupada, the Sunday feast. All right, bring everybody in. They came for the chanting, but many people came for the feast, but they heard the chanting and like that. So it's prasadam, it's purifying, but it starts with the motivation where people are at, and then that transforms into pure motive. I just thought of it. Sorry to go on.
It would be an empty room if we made the prerequisite everyone had to be pure before they joined the movement. There'd be no movement. It's like a hospital. Only healthy people can come here. Well, I don't think we have to build any more hospitals, right? The qualification is you're sick and you want to get better. So, anything else? We can end here. Oh, you have something, Prabhu.
Thank you for the wonderful class, Prabhu. In the verse, it's mentioned Lord Narayan, he's accompanied by great devotees like Narada and Nanda. Do you know who this Nanda is referring to, Prabhu, by any chance? Is it Nanda? It's not Nanda Maharaj, probably.
No, it's not Nanda Maharaj. So, isn't there Nanda and Sunanda? Two guards. And Nanda, it's probably that. Because if it was Nanda, the carrier of Lord Shiva would be there. So there's Nanda and Sunanda are two of his guards, principal guards in Vaikuntha. So maybe his security team. Yes? It's over.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that if everybody could please meet upstairs in that front ashram like at 10 this morning, or shall we say 9:59. So just everybody who's not going on book distribution. So that means, I guess, everybody besides Dvijamani who lives in the temple. Yeah, Naveen, you could also come.